Welcome everyone to episode 18 of the We Can Do Better Conversations. And I'm honored today to have with me Toni McLelland and David St. Martin to talk about the topic of leadership forward. And how do we uplift and empower others to create better together? It's a big topic, and we're going to kind of explore that and invite and inspire conversation within our conversation. And then hopefully that will inspire conversations outside of this and inspire you to take action and give some thought and add and enrich the conversation with your perspectives. And so to get started, when we talk about leadership forward and uplifting and empowering others to create better, Toni, what comes up for you?
Well, do you know, when you said that this was going to be the topic, I thought about it and I thought, do you know what? Talking about it and explaining what it actually is or what you do is really actually quite difficult, especially when people say to you that it's a natural flair. You know, you really have to give it some inside thought. But, you know, it's that whole thing about energizing, really, isn't it? I mean, I call it fire starting, just starting a little fire that you can almost feel in your heart or in your belly, and you want to transfer that over to someone. So I kind of look at it like fire starting and really getting them woke, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of where it starts for me. So,
Saint, how about you?
Yeah, I love that fire starter analogy, Toni. I feel like a pyrotechnic's going to start coming out of us all now. But that's really what it is. It's a firework, isn't it? It's knowing that, you know, when we talk about leadership and culture, it doesn't require a mandate. And I think too many, and I'm talking from personal experience as well as my clients, but too many people talk about we have to create a mandate, a process, a framework on how we do this. No, we don't. It's a movement. And I think the more we can get our head around the way that we need the fluidity on how the leadership piece needs to move forward, then we're halfway there. I still think there's a lot of discussion had around how do we do it? What processes do we need to have in place? Well, actually, we just need to start the movement first, and hopefully things will then come into line. Because look, there is no right or wrong, but we just need it to be done. We don't need it to be perfect.
Yeah, and I think as well, Brian, if I can add to that, because, you know, when it comes to the leadership perspective, I really do believe, and just off the back of what Saint's saying, that it's about not the work, what needs to be done, it's about the people. If you start with the people, then the work will get done and they'll be happy doing the work. You know?
I love that, Toni. And I talk about creating the conditions all the time, right? And about, like you say, people versus process. If we create the conditions for people to flourish, they will have a different energy. They will bring this different discretionary effort, different creativity and innovation that gets suppressed when the environment isn't right? When it's just survival mode people are in. And so as I look at leadership forward, what does it mean? And you both are kind of getting to this, is it's more being than doing. It's how do I show up and set the tone? How do we put humans first, put people first, and be people and humans first? If we're not modeling it and we're trying to preach it instead of mandate, how many times have you had that where the direction is X, but the person and the leadership telling us that we need to do X or be X isn't modeling it? How does that land for you, right? And so it's about creating this new reality of leadership going forward that focuses on humans first, focuses on being, and we can talk about it, love and caring of people in the workplace and in every dimension of society. So we've seemed to have been conditioned away from that as being taboo. And yet, as I look at it, isn't that exactly what we need?
Yeah, we do. And I think, and I know there's no agenda on this discussion, and I love the fact we're just going to be open and just chew the facts. But I do believe, as much as we talk about humans first and the connection piece, which I adore, but it's amazing how much more now, because of the pandemic that we've had globally, we've suddenly overnight, we've had to work remotely, how much that's going to impact a business in terms of when a formal normality comes back where you have to work in an office or a studio. but how has the leadership now, over the last 8 to 12 weeks, coped with then portraying their message to their troops? Because I've got a real funny feeling that, you know, I've heard a couple of great stories where, you know, top line leadership managing 2,000 people globally are sat in a room in their pajamas, you know, engaging all of their employees on a conference. Amazing. That's how it's done. But how many leaders have just not even connected to the troops on the ground? That, you know, they've left it to their senior manager, senior manager, senior manager. And of course, we know there's hierarchy in business, and we're not about to change the whole landscape of the business world. But the impact on me, if I am working for a business and my leader isn't showing me the compassion, the empathy that I think I'm owed, to be fair, because I'm working for the business, if that's not shown, how am I going to feel returning to that business when the doors open again?
Absolutely. And I think that just on the back of what David said, it's, you know, I've worked with boards. Yeah, I've worked up there with the boards, and whether they're trustees or non-exec directors, it's about getting them from that round table into the organization. Because it doesn't matter in your board meetings, the strategies and all the rest of it, you can't put this into perspective until you've gone on the ground and you've met those people and you've had those conversations. Do you know how much those people on the ground want that?
Mm-hmm.
Just to be able to see a trustee or a board member? How can they go and make those decisions if they don't know from the heart or they don't see it? And quite often, if I'm leading an organization, I will go in and hang with the young people in the classroom. I will go in and I'll just chill with my staff for a little while. You know, I'll have an open door on once a morning a week, and just come and just talk to me on your, you know, on your induction day. I'm there. I've got my hour on your first day in. I want to be one of the first people you meet. Let's have a coffee. Let's get the coffee pot out and let's just understand what's going on. So, and people, it makes such a difference just to be able to do something like that and see that person third day in along the corridor, that, you know, you don't have to go through all the layers of other people. There's that direct connection. How are you getting on? And you know that you're going to get it as it is, unfiltered, you know. So those things and those moments are just so special, and people miss out on that.
It's such an important point, Toni. And there's got to be intention with that, right? And that may not have been the way we've done it in the past as a leader, and it may feel a little uncomfortable, but how can you truly, as you say, truly understand what needs to be done from a leadership perspective if you're disconnected from the troops, what's actually happening down there? And if there's layers of leadership in between you and the front lines, what are you missing that you need? And it's about also being seen, being heard, and being valued. You talked about what you do there. How much different do the people you work with feel when they can see, engage with you, and you're inviting that, and they feel not just that you're there and you can, and during that moment that they can connect with you, but if they needed to, they could reach out to you. And how much of that is missing in organizations and education and society right now? And it's
can I give you an example, Brian?
Sure, please.
Because I've got an organisation that I work with, and I do a lot of work around criminal justice, education, care, so lots of vulnerable groups. And I was in an organisation the other day. It's a charity, and they do lots of work around homelessness. And we were, you know, planning for a board meeting that was coming up, and I was actually there to witness a piece of work that they'd done. A male was released from prison, custody that day at 10 o'clock. He came to the organisation with a see-through bag full of clothes with his probation officer. And I saw the staff working around him. I saw them in the kitchen having lunch with him. I went and grabbed a coffee, and he was there sharing his story with me about how blessed he was and how fortunate he was. And, you know, by 4 o'clock, they had actually housed him. And I thought, wow, I can't believe, I felt so privileged to be able to witness it and to see the joy that I had to bring to that board meeting. That, look, you've got to have every single board meeting, on the agenda, you've got to have somebody that is a service user coming in and talking about what it means for them. You know, it was just, sorry, my heart's beating warm as I'm talking about it, because actually it was just really a powerful moment.
Thank you so much for sharing, Toni.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Saint.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Toni, because it's, you know, homeless shelters and charities, you know, very close to my heart as well. And I think, you know, you're right. You know, the more adaptive and innovative businesses are, it's going to have its challenges around the change of that. But if we at the top line, and we know it always starts from the top, but it doesn't necessarily have to. You know, the don't keep referring to the troops on the ground, but you know, the staff that, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into a business, they can have such an impact on the culture of a company, providing the management, the C-suite directors will be open to listen. So that's maybe a piece on how that education piece becomes available to, how do you start to change? How do the leaders start to listen to, you know, the people on you know, in the business? Because that it has to be, it's not historical anymore. There has to be the way that we start to move things forward. So again, that innovation, the new behaviors for leadership. I don't want to say the corporate culture, because there's some brilliant corporate companies out there that have changed their culture, but they've moved with the times. And I think we now live in a world where the times have changed from anything we can imagine. And who's now going to grasp the new change? And who are we going to look up to go, that business there done an amazing job? So for you to have your client, what a way to story that. Hopefully them as a business have started to cultivate a story on how they, as a board of directors, manage their meetings. And that would inspire other businesses, non-organization or non-profit organizations, through to private companies that could think, why don't we try this?
Love that, Saint. And what comes up as I hear both of you sharing is about caring. And how do you get to caring if you're disconnected? And it's with us, not, you know, disconnected, and so like the ivory tower, and then the staff and the people that work at the employees in the organization. And the concept is also, there's, like you said, Saint, it's leadership at all levels. It's not just top level leadership. So how do we enable and empower and inspire and create the conditions and environment for leaders at all levels to feel like they can try stuff and experiment and bring their ideas and have management leadership have their back? And how does that help with creating positive change and modeling that? And so I came up with, over the last week, as I'm reflecting on what's been going on recently. And for me, it's a lot about listening. It starts with listening, then it's learning, then it's loving, love in action, and then it's leading from that place, and then it's lifting others. That's sort of like a way that I've come up with to look at how I'd like to show up. First, it's about listening, because I need to educate and understand how I can be better. And then through that learning process, how do I then apply it? And what does that look like? And then for me, it looks like leading with love. How do I lead with love? And let's look at uncertainty differently. Let's look at fear differently and embrace, what is that inviting us into? And then we will lead differently. And then from that place, when we're leading differently and empowering others to do so, we're able to lift others up, and then together we're better. That's sort of what's been happening for me around this leadership forward topic, and has inspired me.
Well, do you know, it's really interesting as I was listening to you, because part of what you were saying was about what do we have to do, and sometimes it can just be the little simple things. And if we don't get the basics right, I saw a post on LinkedIn by our good colleague and friend Gary Turner, and it was really just very simply about board meetings, for example, or those meetings, not around rectangular tables, just having a round table. What does that signify in itself? You know, just those little movements. So, and you talk about listening, Brian, and actually I might even start a little bit before that, because before the listening, because then no one might be talking yet. Sometimes they don't talk. So for you, it's about observing. What can you see? You know, what can you see in their behavior? What can you feel? What do you see what I mean? There might not even be any talking. It might just be action, silent action.
Yeah, what are you noticing? And are you paying attention? Yeah, that's a great point, Toni.
And just shift into a circular table. There's no talking. You know, there's no talking.
And the circular table, that's a great point too. And it's seemingly such a simple shift, right? Yeah, instead of having a rectangular table, let's have but think about the mindset to get there. It's going from we together and a circle and all that represents of togetherness and oneness to a long table with likely the leader of the group at the end of it, on the short end of it, and the other people in the on the team and the on the long part of it. And it's just symbolism there that what if we just made that little shift and symbolism and just having round tables or just sitting on the floor in a circle, some form of different way to engage in the meeting.
But Brian, why does there have to be a conversation about let's move to a round table? Why can't it be, let's try that room for today? That table isn't available because it's got the food on, or, you know, do you see what I mean? Because it's the conversation that's the sticky bit. You might not come out the other side. So let's just maneuver towards it. They might not even notice. Yeah. When you're around that table, what happens? Do you see what I mean? So it's kind of like, I'm trying to avoid all the sticky bits where you get in the, you know, the mud, you get stuck in the mud. David's laughing. He probably could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I love the round table piece because I think there's more and more businesses that need to, but back in the last year, so a lot of my clients are chief marketing officers, VP of marketing, and one client in particular, we had a meeting and there was no rooms available. That's fine. There was 4 of us in this group, me and 3 of the business leaders, and we all sat on bean bags. Now, I'm not getting any younger, and sitting on a beanbag, honestly, was fine. Getting up was the challenge. So then having this hand of this CMO kind of helped me lift me up out of this beanbag. It's funny to look at back then, but the kind of metaphor around, I will pick you up. You know, you may be, and it may have been me picking them up. But again, and if we use that analogy across meetings full stop, and look, board meetings or board meetings can sometimes be exactly that, you know. And now what I love about the setup of the remote working is we're not having to sit there for an hour listening, you know, to an agenda and go through topic to topic to topic. If that meeting lasts 27 minutes, fine. But let's then use the other time to really start to have meaningful and intentional relationships with people around us. But I like that, Toni. I might have to make a more, well, firstly, I'll get an idea on a better round table or standing. You know, a lot of the meetings I have, we just stand, you know, with a coffee in our hand, and even the walking meetings are brilliant now, but you can't have, you know, more than 2 or 3 in a walking meeting.
Yeah. Well, they talk about talk the talk and walk the walk, but I do more walking than talking. Let's keep walking.
Absolutely. Make sure that Fitbit's on.
Sorry?
Make sure the Fitbit's on.
Yeah,
steps.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And so what I'm hearing in the sharing there, yeah, the circle is great. It's one way to do this, but it's really about disrupting the existing pattern and seeing and thinking differently, right? There could be many different ways to do it. Like you say, it could be stand up, it could be walking, it could be a bunch of different things. And what if we just were more intentional and paying attention to, you know what, there doesn't seem to be enough energy today. Let's do a walking meeting if it's like a small group, or let's, you know, go to a different room. Hey, you know what, this room seems a little bit, they threw some boxes in here or something like that. It seems a little stuffy. Let's go to a different room. It's just paying attention to what's in front of you, not just going on autopilot. Seems to be a good thought process.
Also, what happens is that when you have that discussion around it, you're creating an opportunity for resistance that you don't necessarily need. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. It's not a conversation, it's a decision, I guess. Maybe I'm confusing you by what I'm sharing. I'm not saying it's a conversation, I'm saying it's a decision the leader makes.
Yeah, definitely. But what I'm saying is that, you know, without that conversation, it's almost organic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you're not creating an opportunity for resistance. It's almost like, you know, being respectful. If you want your child to do something, you don't have this long-hearted conversation about you're going to do it for this. You just lead them to it, don't you?
It's not consensus, right?
Yeah, like what you were saying, you know. So
yeah, it's not a consensus thing, but it's just something that, because you're more attuned as a leader, you're seeing something that might be a different way to go about it today that might add value, and you're just doing it. You're not asking for consensus, you're just kind of stepping into it. Love that. And so we started talking a little bit about relationships, or relationships are part of, because it's, and no matter what we're talking about, it's all about people and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What comes up for me too is, in terms of leadership and how to uplift and empower others, it's that openness first, to willing to, like we're talking about, see differently, try something different, and step into some vulnerability, right? Maybe some leaders aren't willing to say, oh, let's go for a walk or do something different because that's where they are. And they need to step into confidence and vulnerability and courage. And so I think when we talk anything about leadership and going forward is your relationship with yourself, and you know, what's going on there, and how do you take a look at that in a way that's non-judgmental, and saying, hey, what am I noticing here that's showing up, and how might I shift this to become a better leader, because
you've got some leaders that will take the approach or the view that, you know, why does everybody keep knocking my door and wanting me all the time? But actually shifting to, do you know what? Because I've been in an organisation where I've managed 320 staff, and when you've got that amount of staff and more, you just think, well, how am I going to do this? So you know, we talked about the 80-20 rule the other day, didn't we, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I love that rule, and I just spend 80% of my time making sure that they're okay. They get their training, they get their appraisal, they get their one-to-one supervision, they get what they need. I'm there for them, and I find that productivity and all the work gets done because I'm investing my time in them. They are my work. Do you see what I mean? My work isn't me locked away, and so I do the 20% that is the more strategic elements that they can't do. But that really is the cog of, or the catalyst to getting them to do what they need to do, and then it all comes together. And I found that that's an easier way for me to apply my time. You know, keep the door open as much as possible, and involve them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it takes trust to be able to do that. I know some leaders I've worked with and that need to have some control over things and may not be as comfortable with, you know, trusting their employees to do all the work that needs to get done, and they need to be a doer. And so that whole notion of, you kind of see that it's more productive for you and the team if you're spending 80% of your time focusing on the team and making sure they've got what they need so they can go off and do it, and you're focusing on the high level strategic stuff as the leader and spending your time there. And so, yeah, that's a great place to look. But what if a leader's not there yet?
Do you know there's this story that I'm going to refer to, and it always puts things into perspective for me. And excuse me if I haven't got it quite right, but you know, Hillary and Bill Clinton were driving along the road, and apparently they saw a farmer, and you know, Bill said something to Hillary around, you know, look, you know, that's your ex-partner. You would have been a farmer's wife. And you know, she said, no, I would have still been a president's wife. You know, and regardless of who she would marry, you know, this is what she's saying, that actually that person would have been president. And that is saying an awful lot, you know, about empowering and who's really behind it. Do you see what I mean? That sometimes as leaders, we're in the background and we're pushing other people up.
It's a very powerful example there, right? It's the lens is always, oh no, if the man was a different person, your life would be different. And it's like, wait a minute, no. What if we just focus on the woman and that outcome being the same, and the guy's just a different guy?
That's right.
And so, but what does that say too about, you know, there's a story, true, but the mindset always maybe gravitating more towards male than female there in that situation. It's like, oh, it's the woman's always going to follow the pathway. If Bill Clinton was a farmer, then Hillary would have been a farmer's wife. And it's like, well, maybe not.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right.
And
that's how I see it as well.
Saint, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think understanding the 80-20 rule, I think it's that empowerment, isn't it? It's always going to come up. If we can just empower the people around us to make their choices, it's okay to make a choice. So one thing, I forget who mentioned it now, but it was Nelson Mandela's father, and he was the chief of when he was growing up, and he always said to the young Nelson is, Daddy, you're the chief of the town, but yet you never say anything. And he says, no, because son, I listen first and then I give my opinion. And we're talking about, obviously, 70 years ago. And I reheard that story last week on a podcast. And I'm like, how poignant is that as a leader, we go in and okay, guys, girls, this is what we're going to do today. My thoughts on this is this. What do you think? Well, I've already told you as a leader what I think. So if you're going to say anything against that, am I going to look at you negatively? So again, it's that if we can empower the people around us to say, look, you make a choice, give me your thoughts, and then we can discuss it openly and look at all our resources to then see, can it work? Because I'm sure there's some incredible people in various organizations that are not anywhere near the level of being heard that have some amazing ideas. So how do we open the doors to that level of encouragement to people around us?
I love where you're looking, Saint. I believe that's where the opportunity is.
Yeah.
There are so many brilliant people in organizations that may be on a high potentials list, but how many times are we asking them or any of our employees, so what do you think about this? We're starting this new project, or we're developing this new product. What are your thoughts on this? Mm-hmm. Until it's the right time in the stage of the life cycle kind of thing. Instead of, I was in IT project management and systems analysis, and there's always, when do we engage the business, or when do we engage certain stakeholders? It's like, why not from the beginning at the appropriate level, not like consuming more of the time as necessary, but if we need the input, let's bring it in when we need it, not when the model says we should bring it in, kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
So it's really interesting where we're talking about some actions and certain things, but before the action, what needs to shift is the mindset. And so, hey, wait a minute, what if I just chose to do walk-bys? And some of the best leaders I've worked with in corporate, you'd see them walking the halls instead of just like in meetings, sometimes all hands meetings and whatnot. There's a different kind of engagement, respect. Even when there's disagreement, there's a different level of, let me try and understand more about why they're coming at a different perspective, why I'm seeing it differently. Maybe there's a willingness to seek to understand differently, but it's easier to go to resistance when there's separation. And so that's where the whole visibility and walking around, like Toni was mentioning, and this invitation to ask people their perspectives and engage them in the what's possible process. Think about that, interdependence, right? Mm-hmm. If we operate with interdependence and we look at everybody's an opportunity to help improve the solution or the environment or whatever we're looking to grow, we're getting ideas from everybody. You may, as leaders, still own the outcome of it, but think about the richness of the perspective you're going into a solution with, especially in the context of what is the diversity of your employee base? What is the diversity of your customer base? What is the diversity of the population that is in your community? Mm-hmm. And we're getting to now leadership is part diversity and inclusion. How do we be more inclusive? If we're not doing these things we've been talking about, being connected to the people there, maybe that's uncomfortable for people. Well, maybe that's the development opportunity that you need as a leader, so you're getting the appropriate support you need. And who's someone that does that well? Maybe I can go ask them for a mentorship. It's proactive and forward-looking and expansive, rather than, oh no, I don't have that, I'm going to sit back in my office and get even meeker, I'm going to crawl up into a ball and then come out when I need to, kind of thing. There's a different energy and opportunity there. Mm-hmm. And so thinking about that in terms of just seeing things and just taking action. Toni, you had a story you wanted to kind of invite into the conversation.
Can you feel it coming? Can you feel it? It was just really, you were saying about connecting with those others. I remember I was working in an organisation, well, not in an organisation. I was setting up another part of an organisation. I was working with the leader of that, and I had 3 weeks left on this project to go. And you know, I was doing all this policies and all the paperwork that goes on the shelf and collects stuff, all that stuff. So I'm sitting in my office and I'm doing all this stuff. And then she says to me, I've got all these appraisals. My senior manager is off. I've got all these appraisals that need doing, and there's no one to do them. 70, and I've got 3 weeks left. So I thought to myself, can I manage 70 appraisals in 3 weeks? Or shall I just take the easy option and do my strategies? But I actually thought, you know what, the better use of my 3 weeks is to, if I can just put a little bit of fire under 70 people, I might leave something burning, as opposed to locking myself away, working on policies that are just going to collect dust. And that's exactly what I've done. And you know what? It was one of the best things that I've done in terms of an organisation, because what it meant for those people, I felt like if I don't do it, they're not going to get a chance. This is their only chance. I felt that this was their only opportunity, you know, to shine or be given some credit for what they were doing. And there were people in there for 20 odd years. Some of them were even more qualified than the management, but they were so disempowered. It was just untrue. But it's just an example of, and even now, years later, they're still in touch, they're still fired, there's still little fires going on. And I would have been doing an injustice if I'd left and stayed with the policy. You know, that's how it made me feel.
Wonderful example.
That is fantastic. So that reminds me of Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. So and that's exactly what you've done, is you've, from a leadership point of view, knowing that you're removing yourself from the business, and you had obviously you had loyalty through years of working with these individuals, but knowing that you wanted to leave a little fire. Toni, that's my takeaway from today. Just that, having that mindset to say, I want to leave you something, not money, not a gift card. I want to leave you something that hopefully you can carry on next week, next month, next quarter, next year. And that's what it is. And I think when leaders adopt that mentality to say, I may not be here for the next 50 years, but if I'm here for the next 2 years, I need to make such an empowering impact to the community, i.e. the workplace, that the individuals, and then I'm giving them the tools, the armory to go on and beyond to do even better. Toni, I love that.
I wasn't in there years, by the way. I was only in there 2 months. I was working on a set project, but it creates a good feeling here, you know, and that for me is what it's about, you know, really. And
so talking about creating a good feeling here, there's a story that we were talking about in the green room before we came on. We're going to invite our friend Saint to share a little bit. And this is an example of how you are outside of work, and just who you be shows up in how you lead. And so Toni and I both saw a video on LinkedIn of our friend Saint, where he's sharing a story about a situation with a friend. And I'm just going to let Saint share this. It is remarkable because it's human to human. I see you, I'm there for you, and kind of very uplifting. And I just want to just have Saint kind of share a little bit about that, if you would.
And I think before you do that, Saint, I think it's worth mentioning as well that so many people do things for public applause. Mm-hmm. And what I actually saw was not that. I saw the total opposite, because you had no insight that it was going to go public. Mm-hmm. So, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Brian. Toni.
Up there.
Thank you. So I've got I now class him as a dear friend. I'm not going to mention his name, but if you go onto my LinkedIn, you'll see a post with me and him. But in the middle of an office move this week, and I always say to this young guy who's not in this country, I've never met him physically, but we've developed such a strong bond through the connection, through our time over, and it's only been the last 6 months we've built up this connection. And every other week he'll say, "Hey Saint, are you around? Do you want to have a quick chat?" And I don't see myself as a mentor at all. I just see myself as a friend. And I've given this guy guidance, and I know he's had some real challenges. And so he sent me a WhatsApp message just saying, "Hey Saint, this is what's happened." And he's been admitted to a psychiatric ward for 21 days. And I was, albeit in the middle of a move, I had to stop everything and take the deepest breath to think, I can't do anything for you. I literally can't go to your house and give you a hug. I know social distancing, but I just can't do anything. So I literally just tried to ring him, couldn't reach him. And I said, look, to do a quick video, you can see your big head and your big smile, and hopefully that'll give him some peace. And I just left him a message to say, look, I'm there for you. Please be aware there's lots of people in our community that love you and really respect what you're doing for your own community. And next thing, he's posted it on his channel. He did say, can I post it on my WhatsApp? I said, of course you can. That's not a problem. And he's put it on LinkedIn. And what I'm really proud about this young guy for doing is, number one, knowing that he's going through a real challenging time for his mental health. I never knew that he suffered with that, but going through that, and then also coming out with other things which, even in this day and age, there's still a stigmatism attached to it, be it sexuality, race, culture, environment, demographic, how rich are you, how poor are you? And he's just come out and he's just openly thanked me, and and I do class him as a dear friend. And I think, I didn't know he was going to post that. I'm glad he did, for his own, I can't find the right choice of words, but just for his own satisfaction. But then him knowing that the love and support he had from messages from his other friends, his virtual friends, if we want to call them that, and that for him, and I caught up with him earlier today on WhatsApp. He's in such a great place now. He's got another 20 odd days left, or 19 days left. He's journaling now. So one thing I said to him before all of this 2 weeks ago, I want you to start journaling. People either believe it or they don't, but if I can write one thing at the start or the end of a day that I think I've achieved something or I'm grateful for something, it's a start. And when he said to me on this earlier message, I've actually started journaling from today, my heart melted. So, but I think what I take from that is you've got to be you. I'm not going to use the authentic word, because I'm a true believer. If you shouldn't have to say you're authentic, if no one sees the charity work I do, I know I'm in a good place. Mm-hmm. If no one sees the work I do for my community or for my friends, it doesn't matter, because I'm not showcasing it. But if we can believe in ourselves, that if we make the right steps in the right direction, in business, as a leader, outside in our community, it's that paying it forward mentality, that 5% making things better. We can't change anything overnight. The atrocities that have happened for years, but the last 10 days, everything is now panned up to think we can make a difference. As Brian, we can do better. And this is why I love these types of chats, because I could talk to myself in the mirror and say all the things that we've been talking about now, I'm not going to have an impact because no one's going to see that. But the more we can talk, the more we can share ideas and collaborate one step at a time. It's like a marathon. You just need one foot in front of the other and you've ran 26 miles. It's the same for what we're doing now. One step in front of the other, culturally making a difference. We will see a change. We really will. So I appreciate you letting me share that story as well, Toni and Brian.
Thank you, David. And thanks, Toni, for that context of this was private and the other person decided to make it public because he was so thankful for it. And the context there adds even more value to the situation in terms of this. David wasn't trying to celebrate himself. He's just being him, right? And this gets to the heart of how do we uplift and empower others in terms of leadership forward. It's about being. And how do you affect the 6 feet around you, right where you are, and how do you choose to show up and every day? to take, what's the next step, right? We talked, Toni, about the action circles, and it's always about the next step. Have the vision, but what's the next step? That's really it. And when people are focused on not what am I limited to do, what can I do, scarcity mindset, but abundant mindset, how can I make that next step out? Reach out to a dear friend privately, let them know, drop everything, because I'm in the middle of a move, drop everything, have a conversation and say, I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. And now they've started a practice that's empowering themselves. They feel different, all because one human being saw another person and said, I'm here for you and I see you. That to me is the essence of how we create better one step at a time, mm-hmm. no matter what environment we're in, workplace, home, community. And so with that, I'm going to invite us to kind of move towards a wrap up here and invite you, us all, to kind of share a final thought in terms of what would you like to leave the listeners with in terms of a final thought on our conversation today, an invitation for them to kind of still think about and enrich and expand the conversation. And so, Toni, let me start with you.
Well, just on that intro and just on the back of what David Saint talks about, it's really about just being able to recognize that you've outgrown a space or you've outgrown something. And that could be outgrowing your management of a situation. It could be outgrowing and realizing that I need to reach out now, I need some help from someone else. It could be outgrowing a workspace, because we always try to maneuver or change, or if something's getting boring, it's like we try a different thing. But actually, sometimes we need to just move to a different space completely, and I think that is really where you feel empowered and inspired, and that's where it will come from. So just off the back of what David Saint said, I think it was good that reaching out and the person that he's speaking about realized that he needs to reach out. And quite often we don't. And it's making sure that you're in a space where you can grow. That whole analogy around the goldfish bowl, they only get so big because depending on the size of the goldfish. So it's that whole thing of, how can you keep inspiring and thriving if you're staying in that goldfish bowl? You might have outgrown your friends. That's okay. Move on, move to bigger friends. Do you see what I mean? It's that kind of thing about recognizing that, you're too big for this space now and you need to do something different or reach out or move.
Love that, Toni. The evolution that happens and, outgrowing things, and that's okay. Like sometimes we kind of say, oh, maybe my friends have been with them for so long, but maybe because of your growth, you've grown to a different place, and it's okay to be in a different place and then kind of invite what comes from there. Love that. Saint.
I've really enjoyed this chat amongst friends. I class you as dear friends. Not to say if I was to call you at 3 o'clock in the morning, you'd be on my doorstep, but I know you're there virtually. But for me, what I take away from this is culture and leadership. It's like the wind. So it's invisible and, the effects can be felt. And if the wind's blowing in the right direction, it's nice and smooth, blows through my hair. But if it's in the opposite direction, then it's more difficult. And I think the whole leadership piece is we need to move in the right direction, forward, progressive, evolution. But it's making sure that we can bring people behind us forward as well. And I do believe there's going to get to a stage where this won't necessarily have that hierarchy. I think there's going to be more leaderships that have the chains of management that will still be in place, but the opportunity from ground level to talk to the top dog is going to be hopefully more open because they want to hear ideas, they want to share thoughts. And look, with businesses with 50,000 employees, of course it's tough, but I think there's still some very large businesses that have made some amazing routes ahead. And I think we've just got to share those stories, share those wins, you know, Tony, the win, as you said earlier, with the charity and the board of directors, that would be an amazing story to share, because I think there's a lot of businesses that need to start wearing their hearts on their sleeves. Because again, as we already said, it's about empowerment. If you can see the vulnerability in me as a leader, well, that's a good thing. You should be ashamed to be vulnerable. And I know that firsthand. So yeah, I've loved this, Brian. Thanks for hosting it and being a facilitator. And Tony, I've enjoyed all of our offline discussions as well as this discussion as well.
Thank you, Saint. Thank you, Tony. I guess what I would add to that is this duality I'm seeing, right? It's both not about me and all about me, right? So I need to step into how I can be better, and me being better is not just for me, it's for us. And how can I step into, and that's what got me doing videos, right? I was in my head so much, I was worried about me. Oh my God, what are people gonna think? What flipped it, and someone asked me about this recently, is I started thinking about my why, of why I do videos, and then that led to the We Can Do Better conversations. That had about the message and how I wanted to help serve and unleash human greatness. And so that made it a fairly quick transition to doing individual videos and then doing these. And I started thinking about, we can do better, and the positivity and the hope, and that's still important. Events of the last 10 days had me shift one word a little bit and make it a both and it's, we must do better, right? The conversations are great, and this is what we want to continue, having meaningful conversations that help us create better together. But if the conversations don't result in new awareness, intention, and purposeful action to create better for all, for others, and to bring the justice where it's necessary in society and equality, then the conversations just end at a conversation. And the aim of what we're doing here is to make it more than that. So I thank you both for making it that and co-creating this conversation, and for all you're doing to create better together. Listeners, I invite you to add your thoughts in the comments below when this is released. Enrich and expand the conversation. What does leadership forward look like to you? What are your experiences and stories, like Toni and Saint have shared, in terms of what that looks like, and how we might create more of that, so that we can continue to create better together with and for one another. Thank you all.